Hey jazz heads, so still not much to report here. Everything's still shut down in the UK and it's not looking like we're going to be getting many gigs in the near future. But as promised, here's one of the lessons that I produced for my youth jazz ensemble over lockdown. And this actually went out as a YouTube live session. This is a little video on embellishments. I thought you guys might like to see it as well. So I'll stick it up there. If you guys like it, there's another one that I did for them. I can always put that one up as well. I was going to try and do as many vlogs as possible in the month of October as well. That was my initial plan at the start of the year. But without any gigs, I'll have to perhaps think about that. If there's any other videos that you guys want to see, then hit them in the comments below. And I'd love to make them for you. Anyway, here's one of my lockdown videos for you. Enjoy. So this video is all about the sounds that we can create with our instruments and even our voice when we're playing the blues. As we said last week, the blues is a form that is born out of slavery, out of work songs and out of spirituals. So therefore, a lot of the effects that we can go through are what we would call vocalized effects, where we're trying to use our instrument in the style that we use our voice. This is really, really important for storytelling, which we mentioned again last week, was a really, really crucial part of the blues. We want to tell a story and we want to convey our emotion over to our listener. Some of these sounds that I'm going to introduce to you will help you convey that emotion. Now, it should be pointed out that these effects are not going to make up a solo. These are added things we can add in to convey that extra bit of emotion to our lines, okay? So use them in appropriate places. You'll notice on the examples I give, a lot of them are used to accent the most important part of the line. So there's lots of effects that we can use that are applicable to pretty much every instrument we play jazz on. Things like bends, scoops, slides, falls, and trills. Here's a little bit more about them in detail. So bending is something we can do on all of our instruments, okay? It's where we change the pitch from the note we are on and we dip below the pitch and back up again. And it can add some real nice colour to a really important note in that line. So my important note is this one. You're going to hear how I'm bending on that note. So if I just played that, still sounds cool, but we can really get all the juice out. Yeah, bending. So scoops are just where we do exactly like it says on the tin. We scoop up onto the note. It's going to be different depending on every instrument. A trumpet being a valved instrument, we're just going to change just quickly onto the next note. Woodwind instruments and trombones, you might find you can probably do that like a reverse bend and almost scoop up to it with a bit more use of your embouchure rather than using your keys or your slide. Although piano players, it's going to be very similar to how on the trumpet. Stringed instruments, you'll be going to be able to slide on your fretboard. Drums, you can even slide by sticking your elbow in the skin. Scooping, it's cool. So slides are going to be long falls or rises from one note to another. again, depending on your instrument, it's going to be, the effectiveness is going to vary. Again, trumpets, it's a tricky thing to do. But it is doable. Woodwind instruments, this is going to come out as a portamento for you guys, and it sounds great. Particularly clarinets, they're going to sound great with this. Think of that. Rhapsody in Blue, George Gershwin. Trombones, this is really easy for you guys. It's what you guys are famous for. Stringed instruments, this is great for you. Just like the bends, sliding around that fretboard is going to sound really, really cool. So falls sound great at the end of a line, and it is going to be exactly what it sounds like. We are going to fall off the note. Brass instruments, that generally just means letting our embouchure go when we get up to the top of it and hitting that note with an accent. Pow! Woodwind players, we can still do that. We often use our keys to fall down. Pianos, that's easy. Boo! Vocalized effect there, you notice. Stringed instruments, same thing. Bow! Down our fretboard. We can even have on the drums, except you might use 2 or 3 instruments. Trills. There are 3 kinds that we use to give some vocalized effects and some embellishments to our line. Regular, we all know these. What you might not know, a lot of instruments have points, especially in brass and woodwind, where the harmonic series crosses over and we can get what we call same note trills. Sounds cool, right? Piano players, that's a really good one. That's going to be on the same note. Rhythm section instruments, guitars, that's really easy. It's like a tremolo effect, right? Stringed instruments, exactly the same thing, tremolo effect. And then for you brass players, there's the added one. We can do lip trills. Obviously, the trill is going to be a way of embellishing what would be a long note. We also have some things that are quite instrument specific in terms of the effects we can vocalize on our instrument. Things like growls, for the brass especially, but it's also achievable on woodwind instruments. So growling, this is something that is a wind instrument thing. There are 2 ways of doing it, particularly on brass instruments. Woodwind instruments is more of a flutter tongue thing for you guys. If you don't know what that means, go and look it up. Brass, there's 2 ways of doing this. We can either have our version of a flutter tongue where we're going to roll our R's at the back of our throat, and it gives us a really aggressive growl. There is another way of doing it where we just sing down the instrument and it gives us a much more long, languid growl. So literally, oh. And things even more specific, like on the trumpets, when we half valve. So half valving, it's a really specific effect to the trumpet. All we're going to do, again, literally what it says, we are going to push our valves halfway down as we play, and it gives us this kind of muted sound. I'm going to get really close to the camera so you can see my fingers working. Half valving, really cool sound. For rhythm section instruments, the drums I always think is the most colourful instrument in the band. Rather than just playing the skins, why don't we play the drum heads? Why don't we play different bits of the kit? Why don't we use our hands instead of sticks? All of those things can add special effects to our drum solos. String instruments, you've got such a wide range of colours. Usually our double bass players are plucking anyway, so why not use the bow perhaps? And for you violin players and viola players and cellists who may be using the bow more regularly, perhaps even pizzicato parts in your solo will add some really cool textures. We then have added effects, this bit especially for the brass players. We can have mutes, and all of these add slightly different sounds to our instrument, which might be a decision we make at the start of the solo this time, as to which mute we might use to convey which sound. We have things like cup mutes, if you want to sound like Dizzy Gillespie. Harmon mutes, if you want to sound like Miles Davis. We even have the bucket mute, which has a really soft, cool, flugely sound. And my favourite, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, the plunger mute. So the plunger is one of my favourite mutes to use in the blues, and it is literally a plunger from a bathroom plunger, which I bought at Wilko's for about £1. Other hardware stores are available. If you cut out the middle and stick a 20p piece in the middle of the hole, you get a really cool buzzy sound, and you can then open and close it depending on what kind of sound you want. Now, if we add all of those effects into our plunger, we get some really, really cool things. Things like that. Plungers. So if you think about all those things, we can put them together to incorporate them into our blues solo. Bit like this.